Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 9th of April. Well, let's get right to the numbers. We saw a little bit of a minor turnaround midday for Tuesday, popping into choppy Wednesday. Did it have a major impact on the readings? Well, we'll take a look at that in a second. We can see from the radar screen here that not that big an impact overall. Still we have a pretty broad mix now looking here at the NASDAQ of buys and sells. S&P moving a little bit more to the sell side. And we've noticed this strong divergence between the three markets. The Dow has been the slowest and furthest behind in its readings. The NASDAQ was the strongest for a while and then moved to the weakest. And the S&P sort of fit somewhere in between all of those. Just reminds you of the whole Goldilocks, too hot, too cold. So let's look at what it is to be just right in the middle of warmth here. Still, cascade lower, no change as far as that aspect goes. Steel moving higher, that's a positive, but you've got the counterbalance of rising cyan, so shorts still strong enough to keep price pretty flat. Some people are going to see this as a reversal day because from a candlestick standpoint, you're in the neck, you came above, closed in the middle point of it, but they would need to expect to see a very large up move today, and that would create the potential of what's called a delta V reversal. We're not seeing it with the turn up yet on the daily. We would have to probably look at our 50K chart to see that. Maintained fairly bullish overall with the extreme histogram and not dipping, but boy, we got close to dipping into the red right there. So we'll have to see if that plays out. It did put in one of these little cyan candles, which does project higher for the next day. It's a pretty strong record of it. So you can see from right here, all those closes expecting move up for the day. It is choppy Wednesday, so imagine it's going to be back and forth. And it'll be interesting to see if that does create any type of pivot move. But for now, what's interesting about this is that you're going to get that separation of the three colors down low and the two above, meaning the steel and cyan, something to this effect where you get a little bit more pronounced downturn. So you can still have up days and be in a downturn. Don't think that it's an automatic turnaround just because you have an up day. So we can see the NASDAQ been particularly weak coming off those highs from there, and no change. And this kind of illustrates what we're talking about. Though you have steel above, cyan, a little bit bullishness right there, but this is still continuing to go lower, not below the red line. So you haven't reached a point of oversold at all. And in fact, if we look at that NASDAQ, you can see we had the beginnings of the dark red, even though it's not showing here. When you see the numbers, that indicates it, and that will indicate that the likelihood of retouching those lows very likely so far. So keep that one in mind. Now you have the Dow here, see at its highs, just coming off of them, but also should start to produce some dark red as well within these readings. And the only saving grace would be to see that steel shoot way up above the cyan. Now the YM though has already been in the oversold category, so there's some problem issues with what the market is projecting for us here at this time. Not a clean turnaround yet. We're going to have to look at the lower time frames to see if that happens. But for now, it says that you should be looking more towards short positions than long positions at this particular time. USO, nice pop move. That should be positive for the market in general, but it's maintained a fairly negative bias overall, even though it's just kind of head straight across. Nothing special with that. It's always had the steel above, which is just a little bit more bullish than bearish. And flat within there, you keep getting the nice up pivots. Those are positive. So it's interesting when you have the steel moving down, which tends to be a little bit more bearish, but green moving higher kind of counteracts that. And shorts in the form of the cyan there have not been able to do a thing. Gold, was within that buy. It converted from the deep sell. The problem has been the steel this far up isn't going to give it too much of a boost, and kind of divergent where you had the short side move back above on SLV. So while gold's participating in what may be considered more of a hedge, silver's not been involved in that at all. But again, I like silver on a dip down here. particularly as long as that extreme histogram stays higher and you continue to see red and white rising, should produce some positive aspects. Looking at X, continuing just a little straight across where selling time is the right way to go on the dips, particularly right down towards the ABM. Still fairly positive with it. Nice breakaway here of the cyan moving lower, steel green moving higher. That should still be bullish for it. We can look at a couple of others real fast. CLF, put in a cyan candle, so that's suggesting higher for the day coming ahead. Its 78-minute has been pretty darn good. Early on produced classic positive extreme short signal where steel green moving up, cyan moving below. Sure enough, retrace, but you're not going to get a full retrace from that likely, given how powerful that move was. So turn around here and projecting higher. So if you do get any lower, you would definitely want to take it to the long side. And this has been kind of the same counterplay with WLT and that AIG. It's a flat line as far as that goes. But anytime you get down to that 49.50 range, perfect opportunity to sell puts for time, given that they do weekly options. Likewise, here it was same situation with the rising of the steel and green. However, you didn't have it happen at the same time you were getting your dip down of the cyan. And the fact that the cyan that's way down here, very bullish setup here. So you have just the opposite of what you're seeing on the market, where you have the three colors above zero versus the cyan and steel below zero. That tells you want to be looking at WLT, a beaten down coal producer. So from this massive decline, we flipped into from the deep dark red to soft red. And that soft red came around, and then we started producing the higher red, white, moving into the higher zones. Yeah, even though they're in the kind of the death zone, it's pretty ugly. Gets pretty critical right here because a tip up back now of the cyan moving higher. You're going to move much lower. So this is not a huge bullish setup as it is right now from that standpoint. So probably just going to be a little bit of chop here until this finalizes, because a pivot back up there and green moving lower is going to create another pivot of the red. We won't know anything about that until the next pivot happens, which could be a ways down the road, but that will become the new benchmark. Right about the negative 7.5 green line. So for those with the indicator, that will be a critical one for you to be watching the red moving above. If it dips back below, definitely going to retrace a little bit. No dips below the red line here to have to retrace. We just have those on the broader time frame, so worth paying attention to. We can look at some of the, let's look at Tesla. We've been talking about this one. A little bit of a pop, but unfortunately the pop comes with the cyan moving higher. So those become shortable setups within that. So it's worth then taking a look at your intraday. Let me see if I can put up a 78-minute of it real quick. Yeah, well, it's still slightly in a bullish configuration, so a little pop up there. So any additional break up to the upside, definitely be shortable, and you're definitely looking for a retest back down to the lows. What is that? Somewhere in the 2.0. Wait for my window to come up. Right there, 203 and a half range. So right around the 204-ish, 215. Maybe you get even a little bit more of an updraft. It could be a very nice trade. Let's go ahead and take a look at the intraday of what we looked at from the market move. Okay, flipping to the intraday, we can see that we ended up here. We had this nice little pop that I told you I was shorting into, and it broke down. We can see that we went into a little bit of negativity, and then a little buy signal from the steel above, along with the green pivot. Did okay for a little bit, but then you can see we maintained that cyan above the green, and every time we came to an intersection, didn't work. We finally reached a point right here where it broke free of it, but formed that spider almost immediately, and it was this giant spread. It wasn't until that closed off right about here, and you had the green move above. Well, you've even reached the plus 13 on that one. And secondarily, the green stayed all the way above. And then it kind of crossed back, which would have given some people a little bit of pause, but except for the fact you had this massive increase of the red-white moving straight up into new zones, and it was that new zone pop that propelled to the next level. And then we just kind of went into a muck period where it was just sort of chopped back and forth. Had a couple of clean signals with the red right here that suggested a little bit of a lower, but it turned green almost immediately, popped, got positive extremes. We were shorting those positive extremes. That created a nice little dip, and that was pretty much bored with the setup, and so I was gone for the rest of the morning. But we had a nice improvement from the green in that, where you really hadn't dipped back below your negative 13. You stayed up pretty nice range there. So you kind of had a neutralization within the market there. The algorithms were sort of pretty evenly matched at that point. No one clearly had an advantage, and it just became a series of chop and muck. You really need to see those breakdowns or breakups or the separation of those lines to give you clearly. But these are still worth a few points here and there, trading them back and forth. With this red, like this setup, we would expect that to come back and retrace down to it. We'd have to see some nice change in the readings at this particular point. Just about to get it. You can see that we're about to make a lower red hump right there, and we could see, well, you'd have to see a pivot break back up of the cyan and the green falling in order for that to take place, but that would definitely be a target point to look at. Put a little value right there. We'll see how that happens if we get down to that 842-ish range, 1842. I don't want to run long, so we'll just leave it at that for now. We'll go over some more stocks tomorrow after things clarify just a little bit more. And if I get an opportunity, I'll post them on private Twitter feed, and you'll be able to see them at that point, or even on StockTwits. And I'll let you know on the private Twitter feed if I do that. As always, trade well. We'll talk to you tomorrow.